We cannot afford to be so politically correct anymore. Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
Please continue to hold for the next available representative.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
We appreciate you waiting and waiting. What is it you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you guys like the stream down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are not yet subscribed, if you want to use the live chat, and we are ready to go. We're back. We will be talking a great deal about the 2024 election on today's live stream. It is Sunday. We usually go live on Sunday, Tuesday, and then some Thursdays, depending on if there's a lot to really discuss, but just fixing the ticker there, and there we go. So Donald Trump today came out. He's leading a poll, the CNN poll. This is not Rasmussen. This is not a drill. We did a video about this already. He is leading by 6 points in CNN. When you throw in all of the third-party candidates, his lead expands to 9 percentage points, even though I don't think that they're going to combine for anywhere close to 23% of the vote. That is absolutely insane. Trump is also leading polls out of CBS. He's leading Pennsylvania. He's leading Wisconsin. Michigan, surprisingly, lagging behind a little bit there, but still in a very, very good shape. Nonetheless, that is their first Michigan poll out of CBS News. They've not polled it to date. Wisconsin looking good for Trump to be in the lead. Same thing with the state of Pennsylvania. So already you're seeing the polls shift back to where they were, because so many people were saying, Trump's not leading in the polls anymore. It's over for Trump, even though Biden's approval rating is lower than ever. Even though Donald Trump's favorable rating has not completely crashed, I think a lot of it was some Democrats coming home. But then you're seeing what's happening. You are seeing what is happening right now across our country. The economic numbers are getting worse. You are seeing the fact that foreign affairs are spiraling out of control under this administration. And Donald Trump gets to go out there and he gets free media coverage without spending a dime with this trial that's going on. And he leads by 1% once again in the popular vote In the aggregate, he's leading in the swing states by a decent amount. He's up in all the swing states outside of the Rust Belt 3 by what seems to be, 4 points or more in North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Texas. They're not even swing states this cycle. You look at Arizona, he's up big. You look at Nevada, he's up big. He needs to pick off one of those Rust Belt states, and he is guaranteed victory. There's nothing that anybody can really do about it past that point, so long as his lead holds up. And we are 6 months from the election. We are running out of time. Joe Biden doesn't really have much to run on, and he's put in a really, really tough position. We're only 6 months out of the election. We're almost to May, and both are the nominees of their party, presumptive nominees. The conventions will happen in a few months. Of course, Democrats will say polling only counts after the convention because they want to keep pushing the coat back as much as they possibly can. And to an extent, they're not entirely wrong. I mean, things can change, but nothing's really changed. Will the conventions even matter for either side at this point? I mean, did they really matter in 2020? Even though, they weren't like real conventions. I don't think a lot of people watched the DNC. It probably helped Biden that a lot of people didn't watch the DNC. The RNC was still kind of more low key, and it's going to be different now. They're going back to the arenas. The Democrats, for some reason, are having it in Chicago. They're basically asking for the repeat of the last time they had it in Chicago. Who knows what's going to happen there? Are they going to have wide-scale protests and social unrest? Because that's something that you saw during the 2016 election. You saw it during the 2020 election. Have we seen that for 2024? I don't know. If we get it, I'm thinking it's not going to be BLM. It's not going to be something along those lines. It's not going to be some like wide scale, there's no abortion riots, okay? If there were going to be any protests, I mean, there were protests, obviously, but a lot of them came in, directly after Roe v. Wade got overturned in 2022. So if it comes from anything, it's probably going to be from the Israel-Palestine conflict. The pro-Palestine side is currently just very disillusioned with Biden, even though Biden is basically funding both sides of the conflict, one could say, in many different ways. And what's happening is you're looking at it. These people are upset with him. Many of them are not even voting for him in the primary. He has no opposition in the primary. In Pennsylvania, he goes out there. You know what he gets? He gets 87 point something percent of the vote. He's not even to 88%. And he's a sitting president. And the people that voted against him, a lot of them, like half the people, didn't vote for Dean Phillips. They wrote in something, either another candidate, or they wrote in Free Palestine, ceasefire, uncommitted, whatever you name it. They wrote it in, and that's a significant amount of votes. They talk about the Haley voters in the Pennsylvania primary. Well, a lot of that could be chalked up to several factors, but Trump's not an incumbent president anymore. You could say he's a pseudo-incumbent. Okay, well, so was Al Gore in 2000. So was, Bush, arguably. Both Bushes, when they first came to the scene, they were the, surefire, clear favorites. Mainly the first Bush compared to the second one, but still, looking at it, it's like Trump's still doing better than those people did, even though you have the same phenomenon of people dropping out as the primaries go on. Trump did better than Biden did in 2020 percentage-wise, but he's only a little bit behind Biden now. And it's more of a problem because a lot of the Haley voters in Pennsylvania are registered Republicans. A lot of those people are more likely to, join Trump on board. Trump's not going to get 83% of the Republican vote in an election. But if you see a massive turnout drop off on the other side, where people aren't just voting for a candidate that's at least ran a campaign to a certain point and spent money in the state like Haley did, they're voting for these other candidates. That's kind of an issue, because a lot of those people might just stay home, drop off, because, this is a movement that calls him Genocide Joe. And do you think that these people are going to actively be able to justify their vote after they've been protesting him relentlessly for the past, 6-7 months? Some of them will, I'm well aware. Some will say Trump is worse. Some will say, they'll find another way to cope. They'll talk about abortion, whatever. But still, the fact that we even have to have that discussion is not a good sign for Joe Biden. This isn't like the Bernie supporters in 2020 falling in line because their main concerns were, Biden's healthcare plan, which Biden, kind of, I guess he talked about implementing some sort of public option, or at least expanding Medicare to a younger age, which he never followed through on. But still, there were things that he did to placate them. He's trying to placate these people. He can't placate these people. Both sides of the conflict are turning on him. Trump's gaining supporters in both camps. He's gaining from both camps. And that really speaks volumes, because usually you wouldn't expect that to be the case. Usually, maybe Trump would gain from one side, lose a bit with the other side, and then Biden would gain with one. No, because Biden is somebody who is A, funding both sides of the conflict, and B, he is somebody who is the sitting president while all this is happening. And then Donald Trump is like, we want to get the conflict over with. We want people on both sides to stop dying. Biden hates both sides, whatever. That's messaging that somehow appeals to a wide variety of voters. I mean, at least with some Muslim voters in Michigan, they may be able to justify their vote for Trump because A, he's not Biden, they want to punish Biden, and B, a lot of these people might have voted Democrat for, religion, racial identity purposes, but still they are socially conservative enough on some things to the point where they're going to move right anyways. I mean, you saw that in the midterms before the 10-7 incident. Tudor Dixon gained, even though she lost everywhere statewide. The one place that she really gained in was, some precincts in Dearborn, Highland Park, Michigan, and that was because of the Muslim vote. So it is likely going to move right, and people are likely going to stay home. You'll see a big shift to the third party. It's a small portion of the vote, but I mean, that's a problem for Biden. But the real problem is also, even in a place like Michigan, there's a lot more white progressives in Ann Arbor and Lansing and other places than there are Muslims in Dearborn, which kind of is like a double-edged sword for Biden, because he's losing those people too. And it's not really like abortion is enough of a winning issue when it was already decided in 2022 at the state level. So whichever way you want to look at it, Biden's in a tough bind. He really can't, cope his way out of this one. He can have as many comedians talk about, the economy slowly improving at the White House Correspondents' Dinner that probably nobody watched. I didn't check the ratings, but I can tell you that they were not high. I could bet everything that I have that they were not super high. Maybe higher than last year, because I didn't even know it took place last year, but still, absolutely just something that is not moving the needle. That's the new cope. Wait till they hear about the Correspondents' Dinner. If the State of the Union couldn't give you a bump, what makes you think this other thing that far less people watched regardless is going to give you a bump? It's not. It's cope. That's all it is. All they have is cope. Now, does that mean Biden can't win? No, he can win, because like I've said, it's a turnout dynamic thing. But Biden's not going to win this election because he's winning the argument. He has lost the argument, and it's very unlikely he's going to be able to spin it around, especially in this day and age where few people actually trust the media, even compared to the amount that trusted the media during the Trump presidency. And also, beyond that point, it's just like, where's he going to go? Is he going to convince people in his decrepit old mental state that he still has it, that he deserves 4 more years? Because that's what this needs to be. This doesn't need to be a referendum on the 2020 election or on 1/6 or whatever. Now, Biden's going to try to make it about those things, but so long as Trump steers clear from, talking about things in the past, whatever, which he hasn't been doing much lately, I think he's in a good position. You talk about immigration, the economy. I'm not saying you can't talk about the system. He's always used the term rigged system. He's right. I mean, the trials confirm it. I think he's going to have to talk about that a little bit while they're going on, just so he can stay in the media. I think it's wise, so long as he sprinkles in enough, of the issues along the way, which is what he's been doing. He's been releasing advertisements. He's been doing them, which he wasn't doing a couple months ago. And Biden spent all this money on the general. Trump spent next to nothing, and Biden somehow is losing ground from a month ago? I mean, it's almost like when people see him, it's like a reversion. They see Biden in these ads and they're like angry. They turn against him. It's like maybe he's better in the basement. Obviously, the ad game now, like, what does it work for them? They spend the money on ads. They're not really moving the needle. Maybe they will later on. They spent a lot of money on ads in October, which is why, like I said, be careful. But still, the ads aren't moving the needle to what we can tell so far. Maybe we get new data, it'll change. But the ads won't move the needle. They don't want to register voters because they're afraid it's going to backfire. Like, what is their goal? I mean, they've objectively lost support since 2020, and now there's a transition team that they're planning for some reason. And maybe you could say, well, technically all presidents have done it, or they do it before the first term's over. But like, still, this is not an election that they see as a surefire victory. A lot of Republicans, establishment Republicans, they said we can't nominate Trump because Trump is going to go out there and he's going to lose. He's not electable. That's already being disproven. You look at the head-to-head polls with these other people, especially in the three-way races or the five-way races, people like Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, all those candidates were performing worse than Trump. Therefore, Trump was the most electable candidate in the mix. And we're seeing that right now, which speaks volumes about the rest of the GOP, because the GOP they're gutted. I mean, people drop like flies here and there. Some people will say maybe DeSantis has a shot at the 2028 nomination. I disagree, but I'm not going to sit up here and waste resources trying to rehash that old feud from the primaries. We have to move on. We have to focus on this election. I think it's a good thing DeSantis is going to fundraise for Trump and that they're meeting and they're on good terms. I think that, we could purity test all we want after the election, but if people want to support Trump, people want to donate to Trump, you can't look at them and say no. That's how you isolate voters and lose. We can't do that. But what we can do is we can, after the election, reevaluate, do we want certain people in certain positions of power? Probably a lot of the people who bailed on Trump because they thought it was trendy only to crawl back, I probably wouldn't want them in positions of power just because it showcases their motives. It's basically the way that I see it. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can't extend the olive branches or put some people in some positions like Secretary of the Interior where they might be a good fit and whatever, maybe not cause any chaos. But you look at somebody like Kristi Noem, potential VP pick, just deteriorated over the weekend. I've been saying this for years. I've been saying it ever since they propped her up during COVID in 2020. There's something shady about this, that Fox is promoting her, and then she caves on a lot of issues in 2021. Then in 2022, she tries to reverse course because she had a primary. She won the primary easily. Then in 2023, she said, we need to move on from Trump. And then she endorses Trump and then puts up the Trump Noem sign at their rally without Trump knowing it, just showcasing how power hungry she is. You don't want to do that. That's just a no-go. And then she's going out there talking about how, she's doing all these advertisements for dentists in Texas and plastic surgeons. Like, what the hell are you doing? This is just weird. She's got all these affairs in her closet that kind of, were unearthed. That was long before. And on top of that, she now is bragging about in a book of hers, and some people will say it's kind of out of context or whatever. It's not really out of context. You are writing about how you hated your dog who was 14 months old and you shot the dog and killed the dog on a farm. And you said, oh, it's farm stuff. Like, no, this is bad optics. You know it's bad optics. You can chalk it up whichever way you want. If you're the governor of a state, you're smart enough to know that that's not something that you say. That's just something that it's just bad. It's bad for business. It's bad for your image. This is not like something where you're blatantly taken out of context by the media, like the whole Trump bloodbath thing, which Biden keeps reiterating because all he has is lies. This is something that you put out there on your own accord, and it's obviously not a good look. And then this is how it gets reported. Like, she's taken herself out of the VP consideration. But I'm bringing that up not just to talk about the VP stuff, which we'll get into later, but because of the fact that you have so many people in the GOP outside of Trump that just implode. I mean, the GOP is nothing without Trump. I mean, you look at the GOP debates this cycle, that's what you get. I mean, you get Nikki Haley, you get Ron DeSantis, who's like supposed to be the conservative, and he doesn't really make an impression. And you need a lot of sizzle, and you need steak that sizzles if you want to win. If you have all sizzle, no steak, not really a good thing. But if you just have no sizzle, you're not selling yourself to voters, even if you believe the right things. And personality does matter. And I say that when it comes down to other things, because you look at people who might even be better on the issues than Trump, like foreign policy, for example. But do they have the same business acumen that Trump has? Do they have the same personality? Are they going to shove around these world leaders on the globe stage? That's a very important question. And I can't exactly go out there and say that the answer is yes. I'm not saying somebody won't come along that'll be somebody for the future. I think they could be. Some people will talk about Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't know. Obviously, he's promising to a certain degree, but he did kind of come out of nowhere. I think more people are going to want to see him in action a little bit more. I'm sure he does run in 2028, but we'll see where he goes in Trump's cabinet. But I don't think he's going to be VP. But what I'm saying is that the GOP outside of Trump, there's a lot of people that just only show up for Trump. And that's kind of why Trump, I believe, is a strong candidate for this election in terms of the polls. Biden's unpopular, but if his base shows up, it doesn't matter. You know, the Republican Party as a whole is not popular either. Donald Trump is polarizing, but his numbers are actually better than Biden's. And when in the CNN poll, they're asking people, was Trump's presidency a success? It's positive by 11, and then Biden's down by 21. So that's a net 31% of the American public that thinks Trump's presidency was better than Biden's presidency. That's an insane margin. Obviously, some people will say that and still vote for Biden because they've been brainwashed. Orange man bad, you name it. But still, it's like it showcases that the support base to rally behind Trump at this point is weak. Even if they have to say, I don't approve of him in terms of favorably, but I'll vote for him anyways. It's like you even had Bill Barr, who Trump has attacked relentlessly, come out in CNN, and then Caitlin Collins is sitting up there, and she's basically saying, well, do you support somebody who's been indicted all these times? And she's like, even if he's actually guilty on all of them, would you support him? And he's like, yes. And it's like, wow, this is a rhino. We know he's a rhino. We know he's not our friend, but it was kind of a funny move to see him sit up there and stand his ground and just say, yeah, I don't care. I'll vote for him. You know, that's kind of how people operate. The people that are like these never Trump Republicans, I don't see any more of them now outside of like social media than I see, in the past. And mainly it's Twitter, because we talk about how people on Twitter usually are miserable. They organize to be fed up about something. And in the case of the whole, DeSimp Legion, the terminally online DeSantis or bust crowd, they tend to be never Trump because, they're online and, the Trump influencers were mean to me, even though they were on the same level on steroids in reverse. But still, beside the point, what I'm saying is that you're not seeing a lot of Republican defectors in real life. Twitter's not real life. But in terms of what you see on the ground, in actual polls, and even in election results, Trump is in historically good position. Yes, even in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania primary was historically good for Donald Trump, regardless of what percentage of registered Republicans voted against him. Doesn't mean that they're all going to vote against him and vote for Joe Biden in November. Keep in mind, about 7 to 8% of them voted against him in 2020 when he was the sitting president. Biden struggling more on that front, but Trump is doing better than Biden did in 2020 when everybody else dropped out, but he's the presumptive nominee. So it's the same basic thing that's going on. But Trump up in the polls, that's good news. Biden's approval going down, it's good news. And this is a common theme that we've been seeing. And that's a very, very good thing. Now, we also, before we get to Super Chats, have to talk about what is going on in the VP race, because this is also very, very important, because his running mate selection is, the race is on. Give it a couple months. We're probably going to know in the next 2 months who Trump is going to pick. And we have our betting odds right here on screen. For those who can't read it because it's too small, I will read them off. But you have Tim Scott in first place, who I've heard from so many people that Tim Scott is not likely going to be the selection. Trump rallied with him once in New Hampshire. He did, kind of come on the scene defending Trump, whatever. But still, I don't think Trump really thinks he adds a whole lot to the ticket. And he's somebody that, again, you talk about just minimizing the amount of baggage. That's something important. You don't want to pick somebody who's going to be the butt of the joke the entire time where it weighs down the ticket. That's why Kristi Noem is below Nikki Haley of all people, and Haley would be a horrendous pick, but both of them would be awful picks, and you could even make the case Noem would be a worse pick at this point just because of the fact that she basically is identical to Haley, except she pretends or at least tries to appear as if she likes Trump because she's, angling for power. And I'm sure Haley at some point will try to do the same thing, endorse Trump before the convention, try to get on his good side. It's not going to work. Either that or she's going to just go full never Trumper all the way, become the next, insert your never Trumper that opposed him in 2016 and 2020 here. But still, Tim Scott, I can't see it. Tulsi Gabbard, wild card selection for sure. But again, I think maybe in a cabinet position, maybe Secretary of State. Trump wanted her for Secretary of State back in the 2016 election aftermath. He didn't go with her. He should have gone with her. Would have been a hell of a lot better than whoever we had if she would have been able to get confirmed. But still, Tulsi Gabbard, is she going to be the selection? I would probably say not likely. I wouldn't say I'd take the odds. I would not take the odds. Then you have Elise Stefanik from New York. I think she's kind of fallen out of the mix. I've heard from several people, cabinet position. She might be a cabinet pick. Then you have J.D. Vance, who has surged recently, but there's questions. Does he add something to the ticket? He is former military. He's young. He is somebody who is from the white working class in the Rust Belt, grew up in poverty. They did a movie about him, but at the same time, he also has appeal to those who are, these intellectual postgraduate types, because he also is a postgraduate himself. But again, there's a little bit of conflict there, and you could say it would make him fall out of favor with both sides, but still, lack of experience, Senate seat opens. If he picks him, he picks him. I love the ticket. It would basically make Vance the successor, but I just don't know if that's really what he's angling for. Would not be a bad addition to the ticket in theory, assuming that Trump won, but still, is this something that he's really going to want to gamble on? That's another question, because a lot of people will say, Vance is kind of like a double down selection. Then you have Ben Carson. Ben Carson is somebody that I've heard the Trump campaign likes, but he probably won't be picked because he's too old and they don't think he adds a whole lot to the ticket. I don't think he would sink the ticket. I just don't think he would add much to the ticket. And no, I don't believe that Trump is going to gain black voters because he's picking somebody who's black to be his running mate. I don't think he gains women voters by, picking somebody who is a woman necessarily. Because I think that people in this day and age, the way they vote doesn't really have that much to do with it. I mean, we've already seen a woman VP. We've already seen a black president. You name it. It's not like it's really going to phase enough people or move the needle a whole lot. Democrats will still call, Tim Scott a white supremacist wearing blackface if he becomes Trump's nominee, despite the fact that Tim Scott is actually somewhat pro-BLM and in lockstep with the left's agenda on that, because that's how politics works, which is one of the reasons why I really don't want Trump to pick Tim Scott, because I feel like Tim Scott has already, while Trump was president, tried to thwart certain parts of his tough-on-crime agenda. That's kind of what it came down to. Then you have Marco Rubio. Interesting selection. A lot of people in chat might not like the selection. I think for electable purposes, if that's his goal, is to get elected and nothing else matters, you could make the case that Rubio would be the most electable choice. He is somebody who has suburban appeal. He does have appeal to women. He's younger. He's Hispanic. You could talk about the fact that, and it's not just that he is Hispanic, because Ted Cruz is Hispanic, but he doesn't uniquely have Hispanic appeal. Rubio does. Some people, I think that in terms of Trump adding something like that to the ticket, maybe he could gain with that demographic more so than a demographic like black voters who are mainly stagnant and I don't think putting a black guy on the ticket is going to move the needle as much as maybe a Hispanic guy on the ticket would for Hispanic voters, for example. But again, there's question marks. I think he's improved a lot in the Senate, but like I've said, he was a part of the Gang of Eight. He was Little Marco in 2016, and he had said something somewhat positive about, Antifa protesters, even though he did walk it back. So there are policy blind spots that he's had. But has he genuinely changed? Some people will say no. Some people will say yes. We'll see what Trump goes with. But Doug Burgum, this is another interesting selection. Trump likes to pick people out of left field. Doug Burgum comes out of left field. Nobody really is thinking about Doug Burgum unless you're maybe on Twitter a little bit too much, and maybe you could say that I am as well, and that's okay. But when it comes down to Doug Burgum, he's somebody who is just inoffensive and can communicate well. And he has a lot of money, good connections with donors. But again, there's questions. Do we support somebody who has been involved with Microsoft, putting them second in command? He talks about these big tech, all these big tech people. He's been very cozy with them. Is that something that you really want to be prevalent in a Trump admin? Like I've said, VP's an overrated position. But that's like the only argument I can really think of against somebody like a Doug Burgum, policy-wise, is like the whole big tech thing. But even then, I'm not so sure that would be his main focus or his role as vice president. But I think in terms of electoral purposes, I don't think he necessarily adds a whole lot, but he definitely doesn't take away. But the fact that he adds, deep pockets and connections and donors and things like that definitely bodes well for him. And he does kind of have some Midwestern appeal. I know North Dakota isn't your typical Midwest, and it is a small state for sure. But again, a lot of people wanted to know him before the whole dog incident, or at least would be cool with that. Why is South Dakota so much more important than North Dakota? Outside of Mount Rushmore, it's really not. So there's that. I'm not even going to discuss Nikki Haley because I think that we already know everything that we need to know about Nikki Haley. But if you want parts of the base to seriously defect, not just online but in the real world, you would put Haley on the ticket. And that's not something Trump wants to do, and it basically would sign a warrant. And we know what warrant that may be. I'm not one of these people that, thinks that, they're going to, if anyone slightly establishments the VP, that Trump is going to be screwed. I don't vibe with that. I feel like he has to pick somebody, kind of bridge the gap between the two sides, because that's the role of the VP, to balance out the ticket, find someone that complements him well, not compliment, but complement. And then you have Kristi Noem, who we covered. Lee Zeldin, that also may be a very, very underrated selection for Trump, because it has been an electoral performer, and he is from New York. Now, is Trump going to win New York? Probably not. But in terms of getting the margins down, is that something he can do? Yes, and what that does is it allows him to have his House majority so he actually can get to work and get things done, assuming he wins. And I don't think that... And Zeldin is a workhorse on the campaign trail as well. That's something people need to take into account. He is an absolute workhorse. He goes out there and he just will be a campaign surrogate for the ages. He already has been campaigning a lot for Trump. And he's somebody who endorsed Trump over the rest of the field when it was not super popular for him to do so. And then the same people who were praising him, calling him the eluctable juggernaut or whatever, they were starting to say that he lost the race, he's a loser. It's like, you can never win with these people whatsoever, which is why, it's not really good to answer to these electabros, the establishment, too much, because they will always turn on people because they have TDS. They hate Trump more than they actually have any principles. But thankfully, they're not going to impact the election in the real world. And then you go down the list. There's people on here who will never be chosen no matter what happens. So that's pretty much it for the VPs. You look at the VPs, there you go. Now, we're going to be getting to Super Chats, and I'm sure a lot of people will talk about the VPs because everybody has a different opinion on it, and they get mad at me if I express any position on somebody, whether I think I say something positive about the person or negative about a single person. There's going to be tons of people who jump at my throat because of it, and I get it. It's just part of the game, and Trump is going to make his pick. there's not a single pick he can make that is going to make everybody happy, because I don't think there's really a pick that's like, wow, he needs to pick this person. But at the end of the day, I trust his judgment. I don't think he's going to pick somebody who's going to sink his ticket. I think he's weighing it very carefully, because his judgment overall has been a hell of a lot better in terms of his personnel over the past year and a half than it's been when he was in the White House, which shows that maybe he is onto something here. Well, we'll really have to see. But in terms of super chats, we're going to get to super chats because I'm sure we have a decent amount of them, and that we do. So we have 1,500 people in chat. Everybody like the stream. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. If you are new, make sure you hit the subscribe button, but make sure you guys like the stream. Make sure we can get it up towards 1,000 likes. At least get to 500. We're almost there. So we have a decent amount of super chats to get to. The Sandwich Man says, good VP options. Carson, Gabbard, Stefanik, mid VP options. Burgum, Vance, Scott, Rubio, bad VP options. Haley, Christie, and the dog murderer. Well, I don't think that Chris Christie will go anywhere near a ticket with Trump. I don't think there's room for the guy to begin with on the ticket, but still, yeah, Noam would be awful. Haley would be awful. The picks that you said are mid. I tend to believe that those picks are, some of them are more mid than others. Burgum is mid, but I don't think he hurts the ticket. Vance, I think, might be mid electorally, but in action, wouldn't mind it. I love JD Vance. But the good VP options, honestly, I think that they're kind of mid, and there's questions too. I think there's a lot of mid. You're going to have to pick the best of mid. So at least get somebody who's not a backstabber and helps you win the election, because it's those two things. That's the rep test at this point. We've talked about all the little criteria over the past few years for what Trump's VP, needs to have. But right now, I really believe that he just needs to focus on two things. One, win him the election, and two, don't stab him in the back. And that's what he needs to do. You can't have somebody who is, very loyal but hurts the ticket because they have a lot of baggage. Because let Trump be the guy with the baggage. He owns his baggage. It bounces off of him. Let him be the shield. The VP pick is supposed to clean up for him to a certain degree, sweep it up for Trump. So, we'll have to see. But he's got to pick somebody that can do that well. And whoever does that well, but also, helps him get elected, isn't a backstabber, that's who he needs to pick. Because he's got to win this thing. That's all he has to do. You can't mess around too much. You fill your cabinet with loyalists, people who represent the most MAGA of MAGA ideas. Yeah, that's good. But the VP pick, it's a little bit of an olive branch. But like I said, you don't want somebody who's too much of a backstabber. That's my take on it. And some people disagree. I just feel like the people that vehemently disagree with my point just don't understand the role of the VP. And I will tell you, from what I've heard, what Donald Trump is looking for is more in line with what I'm telling you. Whether you don't like certain candidates or not, that's fine. You don't like Rubio, that's fine. You don't like Zeldin, that's fine. But, when it comes down to it, he's going to make a selection that's going to be more in line with that than, he's going to take Vivek or one of these other people who is a total wild card and just is a double down in the base pick that likely doesn't, get him enough voters who might be on the fence. That's what it comes down to. So, Johnny Heartdog for $20 says, with Trump trouncing in the polls, he's already has the votes he needs, way more than Biden. It's about the turnout. Trump's base and independents all know what's at stake, so that shouldn't be an issue either. Yeah, you look at Michigan in 2022. They really want to gaslight and say that Republican turnout was super high in the midterms because some registered Republicans in certain states performed decently. But the deal is, a lot of these, Trump-only voters, they don't identify with the GOP, and it's a problem for them in midterm years. It's a problem for them in, non-presidential ones, depending on the type of candidates in the running. But Michigan, you look at it, the electorate was D plus 7, Biden plus 7 in 2022. So, was Whitmer really all that popular? Her approval rating recovered to a certain extent, but a lot of it was there were not a lot of resources to get out the Trump-only base in Michigan for Dixon and these other people. And that's partially why you saw Whitmer win by the margin she did, but still she goes to the NFL draft, gets booed by the crowd in downtown Detroit of all places. I mean, a lot of the people there are not from, the city of Detroit for sure, but still it goes to show that there is this disconnect problem in terms of who's voting and what the public actually believes. Because I feel like the public has gravitated over more to our ideas during this administration. I don't know if that's just because of what's going on, and maybe it would help Trump because it's a presidential year, but still, I mean, this is something that really needs to be looked into. Turnout is what it comes down to. It's all turnout. If you can't get the base out, you're not going to win. You can make any excuse in the world for it, but there's enough votes here, regardless of whatever, tricks they have up their sleeves. We got to win this thing, especially now because there's going to be a lot of poll watchers that they've invested in to, count the votes. Democrats are afraid. So it should tell you this is going to be a lot more difficult for any shenanigans to happen. That's not me saying there won't be any. There's always been. People want to think 2016 was some, the most secure election compared to 2020. It was better, but it wasn't all that either. So there's that. The Sandwich Man says Zeldin is a good option. Wheatley says, what exactly is Project 2025? Well, when the Biden campaign talks about it, it's largely just some nonsensical conspiracy bogusness. But it does exist. But it's not what they make it out to be. They're trying to say Trump's presidency is Project 2025 is his agenda. And what Project 2025 is it's a Heritage Foundation plan to instill as many bureaucrats as they possibly can in certain departments that align with certain values that happen to be more conservative. That's really what it comes down to. There's some things in the platform that Biden is trying to highlight and say this is bad. But again, that's not Trump's campaign. And whenever they talk about it, it sheds light to us on some of the positive things that might come out of it if it does actually go into plan. And then on the other hand, makes them look like crazy people whenever they talk about it. But in terms of what it is, it's largely a conspiracy, the way that they try to chalk it up as some, deranged sort of, I guess you would say, plans to make sure Trump is the king or whatever. It kind of sounds cool when they talk about it, but, it's just not what it is. And it's not even like Trump's team per se that's entirely behind it. It's a lot of people. And there's other plans like that too. They don't talk about Project 47, which is real, and it's kind of got the same, I guess you would say, goal in terms of having conservative bureaucrats, but it's not necessarily as well known. So there's a lot of things going on. There's some truth to it. But when they talk about it, it's largely some deranged fear-mongering. Oh, Trump is actually going to ban all abortion nationwide. He wouldn't be able to realistically do that, for one. But for two, I don't even think that that's a part of the Project 2025 manifesto as it is. Like, they do want to expand certain powers, but it's largely just mundane, conservative legislation. It's largely just mundane stuff. When it comes down to it, it's the Heritage Foundation. Some of it's good because at least you'll clear out these bureaucrats that hate this country, and you would actually start to take back some of the government institutions, but it wouldn't exactly be what they try to make it out to be. It's actually, if anything, you want to say it's like a plan to drain the swamp, then is that exactly a bad thing? Because that's pretty much largely what it could be. And this whole, what Project 2025, Trump doesn't even talk about it. Biden doesn't either. It's his campaign that fearmongers about it. So there's that. Merc IWNL says, fine, just take my money, whatever, rep, better than donating it to a grifter. Well, according to a good portion of Twitter, you just sent your money to one. But all jokes aside, thank you for the super chat. Johnny Heartdog says, Lindsey Graham for VP. He's the one for the job. Ha ha, very funny. Johnny Heartdog for 10 says, there are many rumors that if Johnson didn't pass that bill, 5 rhinos threatened to resign and give Democrats the House, and the Supreme Court said it's up to the House to take Trump off the ballot. Well, I mean, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. It's disappointing. But is it true that there's not much you can do when you have to keep the government open because it's clear that that's something that he agreed to when he got the gavel in the first place. And when you have such a narrow majority, you can't get anything done. Yeah, part of it is House Republicans being useless. Part of it is not being able to have a majority that is really stable right now. So they're going to have to give Biden what he wants, which honestly is hurting the country. But technically, maybe you could say it will benefit Trump in the election. I don't know, but we'll see. Apex Caliber says you're getting more open to Trump somehow winning New York. Not necessarily, but am I open to the fact that it could be like a 10-point win for Trump? Yeah, I think it's going to be much closer. I think New York City, he could get in the high 20s. Maybe he could even get Zeldin margins there. The problem is upstate is not as red as people think it is. If it voted like rural Pennsylvania, then yeah, Donald Trump would probably win New York, but it doesn't. It's kind of a problem. So there's that. Dova Budgie 100 says, sorry, I missed the Pennsylvania stream, but I got out and voted and got some buddies out too. Personally, I noticed a lot of supporters I know not vote. Well, that's good, but we also need them voting in November. I mean, that's what matters the most too. Primary's over, but you look at November, that's very crucial. Let's see. Johnny Hart Dog says, what I mentioned were rumors, but it wouldn't surprise me, not sure if true. I don't know what's true or not, but I will say there is a lot to the theory that Johnson is being pressured because when he was a regular congressman, not in any position of leadership, he had one of the better voting records in Congress. He voted for Ukraine in the first package that everyone voted for, and then he opposed it ever since. But now he backtracked on it again. Is there possibly some blackmail or some? I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot to the fact that he may be being, I guess you would say, in kind of a tough spot where the swamp is running deep. Yeah, and honestly, if Jim Jordan got the gavel, I really think he would have ended up disappointing a lot of people too. Because it's deeper than the man. It's also the system at large. And when you don't have a majority that's big enough, it is kind of a problem, you know, from the get-go, but still. Explorer Bear says all Nikki Haley voters are suburban white women. Yeah, a lot of them are. A lot of them haven't voted Republican since, maybe Pat Toomey in 2016 at the presidential level too. So, it's overblown. You want to look at the primary electorate in 2020 and 2024. Probably all the Bill Weld and the other people, they voted for Haley. And that would be enough to explain 7 out of her 16%. The other 9% probably come home to Trump. Probably. And they probably come home to Trump more than the 12% that voted against Biden don't come home to him. I mean, a good portion of those Dean Phillips voters are Trump voters. And Trump still did historically well. So I'm not really worried about Trump's performance in the primary. This is still a primary where you have a challenger who was a serious challenger, spend more money than Trump, and they're on the ballot. Meanwhile, the primary's over. It's going to favor the higher propensity like mail-in voters, and those type of people tend to skew against Trump anyways. And when you look at the overall turnout differential, the gap went from like 452,000 votes to 97,000 votes from the Republicans to the Democrats. So it's like that's a really good sign for Donald Trump overall. I think the primary was a net positive. Anybody who said otherwise isn't really looking at the full picture. And I'm not saying that it's like the biggest, positive in the world. It could have been better. And you can't analyze a whole lot from primary data, but still it's not like, oh, it's over for Trump, guys. It's over for Trump because some people didn't vote for him in a primary where you have other people on the ballot. He still got 84% of the vote. Let's see. Panthers Kingdom podcast says Biden's a complete joke, the worst president of all time. You do a good job reporting all of this. Let's go, Brandon. Also, should Vivek be VP? Like I said, I don't think Trump is going to pick somebody too similar to him, especially Vivek, because he's somebody who, not only aligns with Trump on a lot of the issues, but he's also somebody whose past hasn't entirely been vetted, for one. And for two, he kind of takes the spotlight away. And do you want to give the spotlight to the VP? Maybe if you're somebody like Biden, you might want to do that. And obviously it didn't really, I don't think his VP pick helps him out a lot. But when you're somebody like Trump, you kind of want to be the star of the show because you are that guy. And yeah, maybe for some of the people who don't like him, you get somebody who helps getting them on board. That's what Pence did. He's going to need somebody who is more in lockstep with his agenda this time than Pence. But still, I don't think that Vivek should be the VP, and I don't think Trump is going to choose him. Now, as a policy advisor, he'd be much better suited in that role if he's going to align with Trump on everything or bring other things to the table, like on policy regarding crypto, policy regarding getting rid of some of these bureaucratic agencies. He might, push Trump to the right on some issues that he should be to the right on. And that could help him, but I don't think that VP is really his calling. Joe Spinella says Trump needs to dump Susie Wiles if she's going to keep making him push promotion of the jab and the Operation Warp Drive that could hurt him. Well, I've heard this take, and I don't know where the hell it's coming from, because Trump hasn't mentioned Operation Warp Speed at all. The one time he's mentioned it on his own volition since 2022, he was responding to Biden, and he was like, yeah, well, wonder who started this, which, again, it's kind of like Democrats are the real anti-vaxxers. It's not really a talking point that I think is a good talking point to use. But still, this notion that, Trump is talking about the jab, I've never heard him talk about it. This is like some RFK Jr. circle pushed stuff. They're trying to sow division on the right, and it's harmful. I don't know why they're doing that. People like Alex Jones even deciding to do this as well. But it's like Susie Wiles is somebody who is a very skilled person. She's very intelligent. She's very good with strategy. Even if that's like if Trump mentioned it, once every few rallies or something, like I ended COVID or whatever, I don't think it's a good thing. But Wiles is by far a net positive on his campaign. Like, she is kind of, on some of the issues personally, she might be, I guess you'd say, more in line with like the old guard. But still, she's kind of like, in many ways, somebody who could be very skilled, help him win. She helped DeSantis win the governorship against all odds in 2018. Trump sent her down there. She got him elected, and then she was outcast from that crew because she rightfully thought that Trump was the better candidate this time around. But, what can I say? John Cordisco's Corner says, ironic since the low ratings White House Correspondents' Dinner when Trump got pissed off when insulted and ran for president. Yeah, I mean, that was an iconic moment. That was. And those jokes were a hell of a lot better objectively than whatever Biden told, by the way. I'm not some defender of Obama, but at least you have somebody who is kind of with it. Now, maybe you could say it's a bad thing if they're actively trying to destroy the country, but, I mean, when you look at the damage that Biden has done to this country, I'd say it's far, far worse, because not only is he incompetent, but he's incompetent and he's still messing everything up. He's still messing everything up with his agenda, and he's incompetent. It's just unbelievable. But he's not the only one doing it. The Voices says Trump needs to start a ground game ASAP. I agree. I think he is. I mean, you hear a lot of things. They say Trump's PACs are paying all of his legal fees, all of his campaign money, and the RNC money is going to legal fees. It's literally not. Some of the money did back in 2022, 2023 was a small portion. Trump has money. He's paying all these bonds. He's paying his legal fees, you name it. A lot of the legal fees that are going to be paid before the election probably already paid. So I'm not entirely, going to sit back here and say that this is like some definitive thing, because people are like, where's the ground game? Where's the money? They said, where's the money? He's broke, and then he rakes in all the money. Then the goalposts move. So I'm hoping there's a ground game, but I think it's just going to have to take a little bit of time for it to fully materialize, and hopefully it will be enough. But they're definitely, if you think that they don't know what they're doing, look at how they've already turned the RNC around. I'm not saying to blindly, expect them to get everything right, but what I'm saying is, yeah, you're damn certain that they're talking about establishing a ground game right now. Let's see. Magna Defender 98 for 10 says, do you watch Salty Cracker? I tried watching his stream tonight, but he went into anti-Fauci mode. I know Salty's hamming it up for views, but it's a terrible way of getting normies back to the GOP. Well, I just have to say to that, I don't think a lot of people care as much about COVID anymore. That doesn't mean that these people were, good in power, or that even Trump did everything possibly right that he could do. But it's like there was a lot of stuff we didn't know about the issue. Trump, if you watch the debates with Biden, he was pushing back on the lockdowns. He was pushing back on certain things. Maybe you could have said he should have tried to use his executive powers more or whatever. But still, you're in an election year. Lockdowns were super popular. And if you think that he wasn't going to, if you think if he was trying to oppose a vaccine, because in theory, it's good. In theory, if this is something that's killing people, even if it is like a pre-existing conditions type of thing or whatever, given what we knew at the time, yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world to say, I'm going to get a vaccine done. But when the vaccine got done, people started taking it. Yeah, the narrative shifted. And still Trump opposed the mandate. So what the hell's the difference? Like, that's what I have to say. But I don't watch Salty Cracker. I haven't really seen a video of his in probably years, but I think I am subscribed. That's not to, insult him or throw shade or anything like that, but I'm just answering the question. Nick H says, can Trump win Genesee County, Michigan? It's possible. They've lost a lot of people. It's even gotten redder in 2020. So, yeah, I think he can, but we'll see. Actually, I have the election shuffler pulled up. Let's see if we could see this. How many votes was it decided by? Like raw votes. If you go to Genesee. Yeah, it's only 20,000 votes. They probably lost 20,000 people. Maybe not that much since then, but they've definitely lost a lot. And it seems like people have been moving less after COVID, according to certain population estimates, which is kind of a good thing for Republicans in Georgia. Did a little bit of a deep dive on Georgia yesterday just on my own, and that's kind of what it showed. So, yeah, Michigan, this is a state it's a great state, and hopefully we flip it back. But Based Alaskan says, on a scale of 1 to 100, how do you rate the Lions draft? I'll give them an A. I think they did very well. You actually have leadership you can trust. Isn't that something? Christopher Laurie for 10 says, do you think Trump will help the Republicans keep the House? They have a trifecta in 2025, but it seems like the GOP is trying so hard to lose the House. On paper, I would agree with you if the House elections were on like a different day or whatever. But because Trump's on the ballot, I think a lot of people aren't going to be voting to punish the House Republicans down ballot. Even the people that say they'll leave the rest of their ballot blank, I think a lot of them will just eventually fill it out because you want to have a trifecta. You don't want Speaker Jeffries. If you think Johnson's bad, the people that say Jeffries would be worse, I mean, I get where they're coming from. It would feel good for a day, but after that, not so much. You want to give Biden the ability to do anything he possibly wants before the election, because that's exactly what it would do, and that's not something that's good. Let's see. Mike M says, if you could have it your way and it was your decision, who would you pick to be Trump's VP? Honestly, somebody like Zeldin might help him out the most electorally. Again, like I said, don't be a backstabber. Help him out electorally. That's it. SoCal Populist says, Trump AB24 PTSO rep. Thank you for the 3. Trevor Hintz says, got my primary ballot mailed to me the other day. Are both Deb Fischer and Pete Ricketts shoo-ins to win their primary? Vote against Ricketts. I think Ricketts probably wins, sadly, because his opponent doesn't have any money, but they are backed by the Nebraska GOP. But the good news is Trent Staggs won 71% of the vote in the Utah convention, and he won the endorsement of the state party, which is huge. And the Rhino vote's probably going to be split in the it's going to be split in the general or the primary. So I think that Trent Staggs is likely going to go to the Senate after what happened. And Trump's endorsement did work a lot of magic at that convention. Johnny Hartdog says, I was joking about Graham, obviously, but on this list, Vance or Rubio or Zeldin would be who I'd like. On paper, I could live with any of them. I just think that the VP is a position that is a little bit overrated, just so long as you don't have an active backstabber that runs contrary to your agenda as VP. That's really what it comes down to. Alex Sorico says, what do you think about Don Blankenship for West Virginia Senate? He's a Trumper running as a Democrat and looks set to win the nomination. Safe are to likely are. I mean, the guy has so many scandals in his closet that I don't think he's going to win. I think justice is going to just utterly destroy him if he gets the Democrat nomination. But I hope he gets the nomination. I think he's funny. I think he's somebody who's entertaining. And he would surely make things interesting. But I don't think he's going to win the seat. I don't think it's really in jeopardy. I don't even think he's that much of a Trumper. So, let's see. Michael Anderson says Byron Donalds would be my choice. Yeah, I'd support him. Trevor Hint says out of the last 6 presidents, we've had one good one. True. I mean, even going back before, well, I mean, it just depends how you quantify good. Oppie for 10 says, what is your opinion on Marty O'Donnell running for Congress? I have no idea who that is. Frankie Mionnet to World says, Byron Donalds is a compelling biography and would uniquely appeal to young black men. Well, I think that if there is a black VP candidate who I would support that might have some appeal, it would be Donalds. But like I said, I'd like Donalds, but I don't think he's going to be picked because of his, complexion. So, Trucker 2022 says, how can I find out who the good America First candidates are in Nevada? Well, you have to do your own research, look at certain platforms, look at who's funding who, and go from there. That's what I would have to say. Rick Rod 95 says, while Trump voters are apprehensive of Tulsi, they would warm up to her after she clobbers Harris in the debate. I'd pay to see that. Yeah, I don't think that the base is really the problem. It just depends on, I feel like you'll have a lot of people who will justify voting for Biden in the establishment because of that pick, because, it's two Democrats, I'll go with more decency. And then the media will just run with that narrative the whole time and try to, pigeonhole Trump in a corner and prop up Biden. So that's kind of something that maybe I guess you would say, drawback of that. Maybe I'm being a little too paranoid. I don't know. Rick Ra, we did that one. Dova Budgie said, don't forget the chats from the start of the stream. I believe I got them all. I didn't miss any. Michael Anderson says, listening to Donalds, he talks like Trump in a businessman tone, which is what everyone loves so much about Trump. He's a very good defender of him. I see him on CNN. If he does that on the debate stage, he will destroy Kamala Harris, and I'd like the pick. I'd like the pick. Now, he'd have to resign and pull a Dick Cheney, and change his residency to some other state. But he's from New York. Trump wants to do well in New York, so there's that going for him. There's a lot that Trump could do. The problem with him is there's a lot of abundance. Nobody really sticks out, but there's a lot of decent options. Like, you have people that you'll grade like a B. This is a B tier option. The perfect VP pick does not exist. They just don't. You could argue that Pence was good at the time, without hindsight, back in 2016. He picked somebody who was not well known, and he picked somebody who, bridge the gap with the old guard in the party, which is kind of what the VP's job is. But the bottom line is that Pence is somebody who has a lot of neocon tendencies, and a lot of that was glossed over because people focused on, he's socially conservative, but then, when it comes down to it all, he's not exactly somebody that's in lockstep with Donald Trump's agenda. It's not even just about the 1-6 stuff. It's about a lot of different things since then. He's completely sold out to the establishment, showed his true colors. What do you want me to say? He doesn't even support Trump this time. It's not about principle. If you want to say, I didn't think I could do it constitutionally because of my principles or whatever, then he still is opposing Trump and by proxy pseudo-endorsing Biden because of his principles. His principles are causing him to sit out this election. That's not principled. The wide open border is not principled. Joe Biden doing all the Joe Biden weird stuff, degenerate stuff at the White House is not principled. It's not decency. It's the opposite of decency, is exactly what Biden's done his entire presidency. Let's see. Matthew Foxtrot for 10 says, hey, Mr. Eagle, 2 questions for you. Do you see the current college protests hurting the Biden camp, and thoughts on RFK pulling potential Trump voters? Best wishes from Alabama and Trump 2024. I don't think RFK Jr. is going to pull a lot of Trump voters, honestly. I don't think he's going to really get a very high vote share anyways. I think we can win with or without him, whether he decides to drop out at his, upcoming announcement in New York or not. That's up to him. I don't think he's going to drop out, but at some polls he helps Trump. Some polls he takes a little bit away. So Trump just needs to define him as the radical leftist he is. He's just a plant. He's talking out of the right side of his mouth a lot on the campaign trail, despite the fact that he picked somebody who was a very left-leaning VP running mate. So there's that. This whole right-wing obsession with the guy needs to stop. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of Ben Shapiro hosting him. I'm sick of other people hosting him. Stop giving this guy airtime. You're going to give attention to somebody who is going to elect Biden. That's what you're trying to do. When you have presidential candidates on your show, unless you're a network that has to, that's like too big to fail, you're basically showing this guy and making him look as good as he possibly can look, and have him bash Biden and the mandates in front of a right-wing audience. But we need to get Trump to win. I don't even care about any other issue besides the border at this point. Obviously, the economy, that stuff's important too. But if not for the border, then for what? We need to get Trump elected. Nothing else matters. You can't waste your vote because this guy's not going to win. And I think more people will know that as time goes on and his polling share decreases. I mean, the people that voted for Gary Johnson, they weren't libertarians. They were just people that didn't like either option. And I think it's kind of like the same thing right now. But in terms of the college protests hurting Biden, they already have. And a lot of young people, very annoying people, by the way, but they are these Palestine protesters. They make a scene everywhere. These are people who are out there calling him Genocide Joe. That's not a good look for Biden, because all these people were diehard, I wouldn't say Biden supporters, but they were voting for Biden in 2020, if they were old enough to vote, that is. And now they're not really voting for him. He's really struggling with younger voters, and he's making both sides of the conflict angry as he tries to placate everybody. But the people that are pro-Israel are going to say you're funding Hamas indirectly, you're giving aid to Gaza. Then the pro-Gaza Palestine side is going to say, well, you're funding Israel. You don't support enough of our demands. You won't support a clear ceasefire, whatever. He's lost both sides. But everybody, whether they're on whatever side of whatever conflict, they can look at Trump, even like the pro-Ukraine side, if they're being honest with themselves, which they're not. They can look at Trump and they could say, hey, well, Russia wouldn't invade Ukraine if Trump was president, because Trump, at least in terms of policy, kept them at bay. But it said, but it's rhetoric, whatever. It's like rhetoric, you do business. Trump says a lot of positive things about a lot of people that usually you're not supposed to say positive things about, whether it's Kim Jong-un or whether it's people that are his political opponents. But he's a businessman. Anybody who knows the art of business, or just trying to manipulate people, they would understand why he does what he does. He's a businessman. He's been in the boardrooms and, on the ground, worked with people for so many years. He managed to be a billionaire, but also get the GOP to be more of like a, worker-friendly party in many places with a lot of ancestral Democrats. So it's insane what he's accomplished. I mean, people are doubting him. Obviously that's not to say you can't criticize, but the guy knows what he's doing. The record speaks for itself. Even things that I question, usually he's proven right. He gets things done that he can. I don't think he has bad intentions, and I think that that's what matters, and I don't think that he really gets co-opted a lot by people with bad intentions as much as some people might claim, which is why the media is so against him right now. That's why they're indicting him. If he was actually ineffective, would they be indicting him, or would they just let him walk back into the presidency? It'd be a good script. It'd be good for ratings, whatever. But I don't think that that's exactly what they're doing. They're indicting him. It is backfiring, but these people are definitely trying to make this election about Trump and his personality because they have nothing else. And even then, that's not going to be enough. Cool Blue 71 says Gallup reports Biden's approval rating at 38.7. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. Let's see. Quantum Strange Quark says New Democrat chant 4 more years, pause, 4 more years, pause. Yeah, the guy, his brain is just not working. I mean, it wasn't working in 2020, but it's worse now. Far worse now. And he sees pause on the teleprompter instructions and he just says it out loud. Like, that's not exactly something good. Matthew Foxtrot says, I think you missed my $10 super. No, I didn't read it yet. I just read it. J. James Edward Gonzalez for $50. Thank you to J. James Edward Gonzalez. Big appreciation to you and to everybody else who's donated tonight. Make sure you guys like the stream. Let's get to 1,000 likes. We got 1,300 people in chat. And make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Let's get closer to 180K. We're getting up there. We got to get closer. So like and subscribe to the channel. Machongo for 10 is just showing some support for Rep. Thank you for the support. Sam Madsen said every poll said lockdowns were popular in 2020, even among Republicans, but no Republicans I know supported them. Was it just social desirability bias? Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people that did support it that were on the right happen to be older. Not every person who was a senior supported them, but I think that, the average Republican voter is 65. And also when they're answering polls, and maybe it's, the age is decreasing now, depending on certain generational trends, but when people are out there, they're answering polls, they say, do you support these lockdowns to keep America safe? They're going to say, yeah, everyone's going to say yes, if they're not like super politically active and understand what they're trying to say. So it might be a little bit of that, but I do think that some of it may just come down to how they ask the questions and also what kind of age group of people are we talking about here. Douglas Coin for 50, another $50 super chat from Douglas. Thank you, Douglas. Says hello from Cleveland, Ohio, where we love your channel and hope to see you reporting live on election night. I cannot wait. A little nervous, but can't wait. We all appreciate the dedication to what you do. Well, I appreciate the super chat, and I appreciate everybody who keeps the lights on over here. And there's a lot of lights on right now as we have our studio up and running. But I will say that in terms of the election, yeah, it's a little bit worrisome regardless. I mean, we've been heard a lot of times it's going to take it to happen for us to really believe it in a lot of cases, but that doesn't mean that we can't actively try to go out there and get this thing won. It's not going to be a cakewalk, but still. Panthers Kingdom podcast is who wins Super Bowl this year. Probably not the Panthers, if that answers your question. I don't know. Hopefully Detroit, but we'll see. Dova Budgie 100 says you did get them all. It's all good. Yeah, I guess you would say I have gotten a lot of people in chat saying read the super chats. I've read the super chats. I don't know why they're saying that. I didn't miss any of them, but it is what it is. Eris Walker says a lot of Jewish voters are quite dissatisfied with Biden over the war in Israel. That's really going to hurt Biden, especially in Pennsylvania. Thoughts? Well, first of all, I don't know if Pennsylvania really has a big Jewish population to begin with. Second of all, it depends, because a lot of the people that care about Israel tend to be Orthodox Jews, maybe some conservative Jews, a lot of the Reform Jews, some of them might be Zionists, but a lot of, there's polls that have come out that have shown that a majority of young Jewish voters or people under the age of 30, they actually side with Palestine over Israel. And the, proportion of the Jewish population that follows the religion in the first place is not as big as other religious groups. So I think that you look at that, the reason why Republicans are largely, pro-Israel in many places is also because of the evangelical vote as well. The evangelical vote that is super pro-Israel. They interpret the Bible differently on the topic than some other denominations do, like some mainline Protestants, Catholics, Orthodox, you name it. So you look at that. I don't really know if there's really a large population in northeastern Pennsylvania, so I don't know how it would move the needle. But like I said, Trump doing what he's doing, he's playing both sides perfectly, and that's going to maximize his support with both sides in terms of limiting the amount of votes against him that are like in the pro-Palestine young people group that are usually liberal, but also he's holding his own with his own, Orthodox Jewish demographic. But I think, what's it called? Florida's got, I think, the largest Jewish population, but it's not even a swing state anymore, like of all the swing states. So I don't know. Vercom Praces for 10 says, do you think there will be a mass amnesty to register new voters to take states like Texas? I think it takes time. I think that if you get amnesty, you're not instantly a citizen. And there's not really a lot that they could really do. So now I did see the report about these like driver's license, like the thing Tim Pool talked about, but like the Secretary of State of Texas came out and he said that it was not exactly happening, and he showed the data. And they're also showing hundreds of thousands of registrations in Arizona on that website. But then you look at Arizona isn't registering that many new voters, and Republicans have doubled their lead compared to what it was in 2020. So do the math. Let's see. Isenal says, what's your opinion on Mike Johnson right now? He's weak. I mean, like I said, he's weak, but what exactly can he do right now? I don't know. Like I said, it's possible that he's in a tough position because he did have a good voting record before he took the chair, but he's letting down a lot of people right now. And he's passing these aid bills that are just these globalist pieces of legislation that aren't really getting our country anywhere. But again, Biden not taking certain action, does that maybe help us in the long run? People could ask questions about that, but still, vacating is not realistic at this point because Democrats will probably save him, and it's a mess. The whole thing is a mess. But I don't know. I think we're going to have to reevaluate the speakership after the election. The Jackals of Terra Argentum for 10 says, seems to me that the coming election will be a referendum on our institutions and the Cold War mindset rather than on any one candidate. Well, I think it's part of it. A lot of people are not voting for the issues anymore. They're voting for what they believe to be their vision of the country. The left likes open borders, whether they want to admit it or not. They kind of have to say we have a crisis, but now apparently it does exist and it's now Trump's fault. I don't know. That's what they're saying because they're dumb. But yeah, it is by and large a referendum on our institutions, but also a lot of people can look and they can see what Biden's done to the country, and he's kind of their figurehead, and I think our figurehead is better than theirs. So putting him in that position is kind of just, a lot of people right now, they're not a big fan of our institutions, period. And Donald Trump is that change candidate still, even though he's been in the White House, he still is that change candidate who shakes up Washington. And that's what a lot of people now, when they have an economy that is worse than 2016, when you have a border that's more open than 2016, these people can point to it and they could say, hey, well, look at this. Ryan McDonald USA says, Scott Pressler's hitting northeastern Pennsylvania specifically. Yeah, I tweeted out the map of where the shift really occurs and where we need to limit the potential gains. And he replied to it, not saying that that has anything to do with it, but he needs to be, Pennsylvania's ground zero. He needs to be there. But one Scott Pressler registering voters is not enough. I think that that's something that people need to understand. We need so many people doing what he's doing, because if you have, 1,000 people doing it, that's huge. And the Democrats have been doing it, but now they're trying not to do it because they're afraid that their registration drives are going to hurt them now, like the new law in Pennsylvania technically hurt them. Also, shout out to Bruce Rice, gifting 5 memberships. Thank you, Bruce. I think this guy's done it before too. But we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes, so this will be I think we'll go for another 10. So this will be the final call for Super Chats. If you guys want to send in a Super Chat, now is probably the best time to send one in, because if you send it in too late, I'm probably not going to get it. But we could talk about the election. We could talk about politics. We could talk about whatever. But the VP pick. But for 10 minutes. Otherwise, I could look in regular chat as well. But until then, we will prioritize reading any Super Chats that come in. So, also, Trump is rallying in Michigan and Wisconsin on Wednesday, May 1st. Dova Budgie 100 says, when is Trump free to leave New York and how's that going? Well, when it comes down to it, I really feel like it's Wednesdays and certain weekend days, because he's rallying on Wednesday. The weekends he's free. And it's like they're locking him up in court, and you're seeing what's happening. It's just insanity what's going on. It's crazy. Eris Walker says, should Clarence Thomas retire if Trump wins in 24 and Senate is red? I love the man, but he is old and I don't want him dying under a Dem president. Yeah, he should retire. I love the guy, and maybe he should retire not the first or second year in the Trump term, but maybe the third. But yeah, him and Alito are getting old, and if we want to keep the court, we need these people to make sure that they're retiring under the Trump administration, not a potential Democrat administration in the future. Razgriz259 says, is there a MAGA candidate running for Missouri's 6th district? We need to vote out Sam Graves, the Rhino. I don't know. Look on Ballotpedia, look on Wikipedia. It probably has all the potential candidates on there, and maybe there's nobody challenging him, but we'll see. Let's see what chat's saying. It's funny to see all these people hitting on Trump for no reason. Would you lose? No, I'd win. Trump 24. Exactly. Did I know Scott Presler? Yeah, everybody knows Scott Presler's gay. Personally, I need him to win the election or register voters. I think that's what we need to focus on right now. Who's in 2028? Like I said, let's focus on right now. We'll focus on what's going on. Who do I think would be the best VP for Trump? Honestly, I can't answer that. I think there's some people a lot of people I'd be fine with. And like I said, not a backstabber and helps his electoral chances. That's what he needs to do. And if he can do that, then he's going to be in a good position. But if he puts somebody in there that is a little bit too much of a wild card, it might cause a little bit of a risk factor, and I don't really think that he wants to do that. So the Green Renegade for 5 says, do you see any scenario where California actually starts trending red again? Well, it's doing it right now. I mean, you can't look at the election data and say otherwise. Now, you could say it's not going to flip. It might not, but is it moving to the right? Yeah. I think part of it is just awful leadership, and that's a big part of why, because people are seeing what it's like to live under a permanent Democrat leadership structure. That's what they have in California. They're, at the national level, changing a little bit more slowly, but Newsom didn't even get 60% of the vote, and Republicans are doing better with Hispanics, so that's going to help out a little bit too. Let's see. Sam Madsen says, do we hold the Senate in the Trump midterm? I'd say it depends on how many seats we end up with. I think it's possible, because if you see Trump win, you're going to have the Senate period, so you can't lose any net seats. So, does Collins win? That's a question. Does Ossoff hold on in Georgia if Kemp goes against him? Does Tillis run, or does he retire, and Republicans, are they going to hold that seat? What goes on in Michigan? Probably, I'd say that's a Democrat hold. If Trump's in the White House, probably either way a Democrat hold, given turnout patterns in the here and now. And for all we know, if Peters retires, Whitmer might run for that seat. That'd be a big mess. But I don't know. I don't know if we're going to hold the Senate. It's possible. But the only seats I can think of us losing in that midterm are Maine and North Carolina. But even then, Susan Collins is just a different breed of a candidate, and Maine is a different breed of a state. So I'd say North Carolina is probably the the race that Democrats could flip. So I think it's likely Republicans hold, but it's too early to tell. Let's see. Good thing Texas is a large rural population. True. I mean, even like the smaller areas, they all add up. Just when you think that Republicans are screwed because, they're at 90% in these deep red counties, the 90 goes to 95, the 80 goes to 85, and it cancels out a lot of these Democrat gains. Now, I'm not worried about Texas now, but I'd be pretty worried about it in the future after the if we can't get the border under control. That's why we need Trump. These people have no business being in our country. They need to be deported. They entered illegally, for one. For two, they're coming in for a specific purpose. Biden specifically opened the border with his own executive actions because he wants these people here. The Democrats want these people here for votes, for many other reasons. So much for being a threat to the American democracy. They don't believe in the American part, and the rest of it's a scam. So, yep. Let's see. Think it's possible for DeSantis to be Trump's VP? Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I think he's going to stay governor. But him helping out with the donors is not a bad thing. I'm not going to critique it, even if I've had a lot of criticism of DeSantis and his presidential bid. If he's going to want to help out and be the Ted Cruz meme, making the calls for Trump, you're doing it a lot earlier than September. I think it's a good thing the party, I guess you'd say, is uniting sooner than later behind Trump, which is a really good thing, because if DeSantis somehow won the nomination, I feel like it'd be a lot harder for him to do so. Biden said flood the border. Harris said flood the border. We're not, exactly, we're a constitutional republic. We're not a democracy. Yeah, we've never been a direct democracy. It's what the whole popular vote crowd doesn't seem to understand. Democracy is largely a scam. Our founding fathers specifically opposed a direct democracy. They specifically opposed this false idea of democracy that Biden talks about all the time. And by the way, young voters and minority voters and a good chunk of the Democrat base outside of like these ex-neocons, they don't really resonate with that message. That's not me saying that they're not going to vote for Biden, but if you're talking about turnout, it's going to get a lot tougher to energize those demographics when your messaging just doesn't resonate with those people. What's going to be the tipping point county? I don't think there's tipping point counties. You could say bellwether counties, but Erie, Pennsylvania is one that is kind of a decent indicator, but it's not something that is a guarantee to flip, or if we don't flip it completely, it doesn't mean that Trump is going to lose Pennsylvania, but that's like a bellwether for Pennsylvania. But the old bellwethers don't add up, because bellwether counties don't exist anymore in the sense that they used to, because a lot of those bellwether counties that Donald Trump won in 2020 were not going to flip regardless, even if Biden won in a landslide, because Trump appeals to those white working class voters, like in Vigo County, Indiana, Valencia County, New Mexico. That's not really where Donald Trump is going to lose any support going forward. I mean, Obama barely won a lot of those counties himself. So seeking funding for tents is what could be done to stop the RNC, Senate, and House Republicans from purposefully tanking MAGA candidates. They raise money in the name of MAGA, then spend the money against our candidates. Well, the new RNC and the new NRCC, NRSC, they're playing by better rules. I wouldn't say they're ideal, but they are playing by better rules. But still, I mean, you're going to have to rewrite. You have to rewrite the rules. And that's how you change the way the system works. And you have to go from there. Let's see. What red states do I expect to turn blue soon, and vice versa? Like, I don't know. We always think that some state will flip and it never does, or some state, actually trends in the opposite direction than we expect sometimes. I don't know. I have no idea. But we'll see. When shenanigans happen again, what will you do? Well, we'll have to watch it happen. We can't operate like it's a guarantee or people are going to just not turn out, and we don't want depressed turnout. We want to beat the system by as much as possible that we can do. And I think we can. I think we have the manpower for it, but it just comes down to, does it happen to actually happen in action? Are we going to turn out our voter base? Well, we'll have to find out. We got to get out and voting for sure, or it's going to be all for nothing. I don't want it to be all for nothing. So Nevada, a lot of people's, Nevada, I think, is a state that's going to flip. There's always talk about Kansas going blue in 10, 15 years, but also by that same logic, maybe Delaware goes red at the same time. So, the electoral map is always changing, but we got to make sure that we get the border under control so we don't, lose power for generations. And it'll be a major setback because Democrats want that, underclass that they view as an underclass to come into the country, get on government assistance, and then just be automatic Democrat votes, regardless if whatever they think about a social issue. So there's that. But yep. All right. I think that's it for Super Chats. I think that we are going to end the stream right here, right now. So everybody, like the stream before you go. Let's hit 1,000 likes. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications if you're subscribed. If not, subscribe before you go. And make sure you guys don't miss any future videos or streams by hitting the bell. And follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. And I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.